subscriber you have dialed is not available or has traveled outside the coverage area. Please try your call again later.
Welcome to episode 4 of Two Rad Dads. I'm Matt.
I'm Sean. In case you're new here, we're a couple of Zennials who like to wax nostalgic about the things we grew up with in the 80s and 90s. Welcome.
Yeah, so update for our back to school episode
Yeah.
was not me. Augie got the laser background.
Nice.
Yes. I just asked him, I'm like, do you want the American flag again? He's like, I want the lasers.
Heck yeah, he does.
Lasers are ugly. They're not like they used to be.
No.
No, they look like more like Christmas lasers. And they're weird looking, but hey, he wanted lasers. He got lasers.
That's right. That's right. He's going to remember that when he's older.
Yep.
He's not going to look back and be like, my parents wouldn't let me get the lasers. Instead, he's going to be like, oh yeah, I was the cool kid. I got the lasers. You know what else I found out about recently?
What?
When I was in school, and I'm assuming when you were in school, we decorated our lockers.
Yep.
Like, is that not a thing anymore? What the hell? Like, I remember that was like a big deal.
It was, yeah.
You would open your locker, I mean, the entire inside of it was just full of all kinds of stuff. Magnets and stickers. You'd go to the store and you'd buy special like little shelving units that would go in the middle, and you'd have different hanging hooks and magnet hooks and all kinds of stuff. You put up all kinds of things.
So there was a couple kids that hooked up garage door openers to theirs. So they had the button and they were walking up and boom, it would open.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't think they do that anymore.
No, because everything's digital. They don't use lockers.
They don't.
They might
yeah,
hang
they
a
don't seem to use them
jacket.
as much.
But-
It's not like they're every class going there.
Everything
in between
fits.
every class.
Everything fits in their backpack. So you just bring your backpack everywhere.
It's so weird. Yeah, I was talking to my kids, and they barely use them. Half the kids don't even use it, or they don't put a lock on it, or whatever. Like, that was unheard of.
Oh, I know. No one put locks on ours.
Oh, we always did, because you had all kinds of cool stuff in there. You didn't want people to steal or mess it up, you know?
No, we were a small enough school.
Every locker that opened, you knew what kind of bands people liked. You knew their favorite sports teams. You knew what activities they were in. All that stuff. It was just boom, right there. Yeah, just something that occurred to me the other day. I was like, huh, that's not even really a thing. It's weird.
Well, that was a good little recap and follow up and continuation of our back to school episode.
Yeah.
And today, what are we talking about?
We're going to be talking about phones this week. That's right. All things telephone.
Yeah, and why did this come up, Sean?
Well, you know, I had to break down and buy my younger son a new cell phone this week. And it just kind of, you know, brought back some memories. Thinking back of what we grew up with and what they have now. And it just started reminiscing about some things, and conversation just snowballed, and we realized, hey, why don't we just make this an episode? So that's what we're going to do.
It's so weird that these kids these days are so young and they're walking around with a phone in their pocket and they can reach out to their friends or us. You know, that's the main reason that you probably got your son the phone, was to communicate with you. And we didn't have that luxury when we were younger.
I think of all of the new technologies we have, that is the thing that it is most impossible to explain to our kids what it was like to be without. And not just be without, like it not existing, period. That's the hardest one for them to wrap their heads around, I think. I remember, you know, when first phones were coming out, people would, you know, hold out and be like, oh, I don't want people to reach me. I don't, you know, there was like a refrain that you heard quite often, you know, I'm not getting one of those things. They can leave me a message at home. I don't want to be reached when I'm out. And now it's just expected, you know? Yeah, I mean, it's not like I really wanted to get him the phone. It was just a matter of necessity at this point. Or what's funny is it seems like necessity now, but we never even had that opportunity when we were kids, right? But now it's just expected and things are just a little different. So yeah, with after school activities and clubs and different things, you know, arranging pickups and drop-offs and things like that, it's just a convenience.
Yeah, and back in the day, we'd be sitting on the curb waiting for our parents to show up. No idea when they would show up, if they even remembered to come get us.
Nope. Definitely had many times when, okay, pick me up at 7, and you know the bus gets back from the game at 6, and I'm sitting there on the curb for an hour, and I'm like, I know they're not coming till 7 at the earliest.
Yep.
You know. Yeah, there was no way to send a message and say, hey, we're early. Come early.
Yep.
What'd you do? You'd use the payphone, right? Remember payphones?
Yes, they were everywhere. Every gas station had like
Yeah.
a bank of like 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Every
more
public
if you're.
building.
Yeah. Every street corner had a payphone.
Mm-hmm. I remember when it was a big deal when they switched from 10 cents to 25 cents.
Yeah.
When it went from a dime to a quarter to make a phone call. That was like a big deal.
Yeah.
It was always one of those things where, you know, safety first, always keep a dime with you so you can make a phone call or put a dime in your backpack just in case. And then everyone had to switch to quarters. Yeah.
Too rich for my blood. You just call collect.
You call collect. Yeah. That's what you do, right? You don't have a quarter on you. What do? You call collect and make them pay for it.
Yes. Or
And if you do what I do,
yeah,
you call collect, you'd have to record who you were so that
Yeah.
the person receiving the phone call would say, you have a collect call from, and they would cut into your recording, right?
yeah,
So they wanted you to say like, Bill. And they'd be like, oh, okay. Do you accept this call? Yeah, I'll accept a call from Bill. Bill's a good guy. He's calling me for a reason. So instead, I would just try to be like, hey, it's me. I need a ride home. Come right now. You know, try to slam that all in there so that when they get it, it's like, you have a collect call from.
the bus came early. Come get me.
Try to cram it all in. That's right. Trying to cheat the system.
Yeah.
I think everybody tried that.
Yeah, but even to this day, when I see or walk by one of the phones, I always stick my finger in the coin slot. And it's like, oh, are there any coins in here?
Yeah. We had a couple payphones in my school, right in the hallway off of the cafeteria. So that was one of those things, like sometimes if we were bored after lunch or something like that, we'd go out there and just mess around with the payphone, call 1-800 numbers or do some prank calls or, yeah. That was fun. Like almost every company at the time, every business had a 1-800 number you could call.
Yep.
You know, like now they all have a website they send you to, right? And they have social media, you know, follow us on Instagram and whatever. And, you know, and back then it was just like, call 1-800, I feel okay. Remember that one? That was OK Soda. That thing that came and went pretty fast. Things like that. And you know, you'd call the number and they'd play some funny jokes or something, or they'd tell you about their product. I don't know why, but we did it. We called them.
Yeah.
It was funny. But, oh well. It's insane how fast they disappeared.
Yes.
Because they were everywhere. Like you said, every public building, every strip mall.
And for the most part, they all worked. Now when you see a payphone, it's missing the receiver or it's like broken or it's just a shell and it's... But yeah, no, they were
smashed
everywhere.
to pieces. And
you had the phone booths on the street.
Those things were heavy duty too. Like the receivers on those things were heavy. And I mean, the phone books, remember the cable that they used to attach the phone books? You couldn't walk away with the phone book. Yeah, just phone books in general, right?
So I got a Yellow Page phone book.
Yeah.
It's only Yellow Pages now. A few weeks ago in the mail, and I was trying to explain to my daughter what it was. She's like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "This thing used to be like 10 times thicker.
Yeah, it was huge.
They would weigh like 10 pounds."
Yeah, if you needed to kill a bug in your house, the phone book was your go-to.
Depending where you lived, you'd have to be careful though, because you might break the counter or floor.
If you lived in a big city. Oh yeah.
And there's always a thing, I can rip a phone book in half, and everyone would always be trying.
Yeah, that was a show of great strength.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I remember like the day they would come every year. Oh, it was phone book delivery day.
Oh man, it was a big thing.
Thud out on the front porch or something.
Yep, and it's a little bag. It was a big thing. Everyone would always flip in, what page are we on?
Yeah.
And you'd go and you look up your number, or if you had a business, you'd look up your business and be like,
oh, there we are.
There we are. Yeah, we're in there. Oh, look how many other, people with our name are in here.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there was always that one friend who was unlisted.
Oh, yeah.
Fancy. Unlisted.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you'd start going through the yellow pages.
Those yellow pages, it wasn't just to look up a phone number. You were looking up to discover the business in the first place, right? I mean,
correct.
If you needed to find an auto parts shop, say, you would not know where they were or what existed. You'd look in the phone book. It would be alphabetical. You'd look under that category. And sure enough, there was a whole bunch of businesses listed under that category. And you just start calling around, asking if they've got your part.
And there's a ton of advertisements in there. So, you could be looking for, a pizza. And there could have been like 40 ads, full page ads, quarter page ads as you're flipping through.
Well, then you had all those businesses who started setting up their names with something like ABC Plumbing, right? So, I'm going to be at the top of the alphabet. So I'm at the front page of the plumbing section of the phone book.
AAA.
Yeah, exactly. Every business had a AAA and an ABC and an A+.
Yep. That's how you got to the top of the book.
Yeah. I'd just go to the end, work my way backwards, figure though they're less busy. I'm going with Zelda.
And you always had the full, and then you had like the specialty phone books too that were much smaller, but they were focused on different, categories or what have you.
Yeah, that's right. I remember having the big, yellow and white pages, the big phone book. And then we had, every year they would come out with a smaller local version just for our town. So instead of our whole area code or our whole region, it was just our town. And it was a little bit more specific. It had, a town map inside. It had some advertisements from, the local pizza shop or whatever. Yeah, I remember that too. That was a little easier, a little more easy to manage and thumb through, for sure.
And it seemed like our parents always knew how to get in touch with us, even when we thought we were being sneaky and, going to this random friend's house or something like that. Our parents always ended up calling the right house.
I remember schools, when I was a kid, they gave parents out like a directory of sorts that listed all the kids in your class and
yeah. But there was always some sort of like phone tree that would always happen.
Each sports team that we did even had a phone tree, where the coach would call the first kid on the list, and then they would call the next kid on the list. They would call the next kid on the list. It would work its way down. And if somebody didn't answer, you'd have to skip them and go to the next person to keep the train rolling. It's just not something we do anymore. Now we get all these mass group text messages.
And every group and organization has their own platform that they communicate on. And
or they have an app.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I don't know that it's better, to be honest. Phone constantly going off in my pocket.
Yeah, or not even that stuff, but just playing in the neighborhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did you know when to be home? The streetlights came on. Be home.
Yeah, your parents told you.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, and
be home by whatever time, right? Or it was just your family had a set time, right? Where 7:00 every night you got to be home, whatever that time may be.
Yep. Yeah, and now it's like, oh, you leave the house, oh, you better have your phone on you. And then it's like, you never know what's going on because, do I have time to do this with my friends or what have you? Because it's like, oh, start texting, oh, dinner's done, come home, whatever. And it's like,
yeah.
blessing and a curse, these phones.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, because gone is the art of environmental awareness with them. I was at my parents' house a few weeks ago, and my niece was there, and she was playing with my son in the woods, and right in the side by side and stuff. And we hadn't heard anything for a little bit, and we were like, "What's going on? You know, did something happen?" And so we started yelling, and we were running into the woods and stuff, and they were just playing. And we're like, "Hey, didn't you hear us yelling?" They're like, "Oh no, we thought if anything happened, you would text us or call us." And it was like, wow, like you didn't hear like us calling your name. Where for us, like you could have been a mile down the road and you heard, your parents or your friends yell your name, and it was like, "Oh yeah, hey!" And they'd be yelling all across the neighborhoods all the time. Everyone just communicating. And now these kids, they're like oblivious to that because like, "Oh, you'll just text me. I'll wait for the buzz."
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, you don't have those moms hanging out the door yelling anymore to tell everyone to come home for dinner.
Yep.
Yeah. If you didn't have a set time or you were late, you knew you'd get summoned through a screech across the neighborhood.
Yep. Yeah, you never wanted to be that kid that the parent was driving down the road yelling out the car because it's like, "Oh, you're late, you're in trouble."
Yeah.
And
I had to come find you.
Yeah, and they'd always like sneak through the backwoods or the backyards of all the houses to get home, and then the parent shows up in the driveway and they're like sitting in the house like, "Oh, I've been here."
Yeah. Ferris Bueller their way home.
Yeah.
And the other thing too that I was trying to explain to my kids was, now there's 10 or 11 digit dialing standard just about everywhere now. Well, back in the day, it was only 4-digit dialing.
I never had that.
Yeah.
I had 7-digit.
Yeah. No, we had back in the 80s in our town. It was a small town, so it was only 4-digit dialing. As long as you're staying within the town, there's only 4 digits.
Wow.
And then they added the 7 digits because you're crossing over into other towns throughout the state.
No, I grew up.
And then you had your zip codes. So
I grew up in a bigger area, much more populated, closer to a big city. And we always had the 7-digit, but I do remember the big deal when we had to move to the 10-digit.
Yep.
And along with that came a whole slew of new area codes. So it was a big deal. You'd take an area that had the same area code forever, and all of a sudden they would cut it in half, say, "This side, you keep the number. This side, sorry, you get to print all new business cards. You're getting the new number." I don't think they do that now. I think now they have an overlay system.
Yeah, they just roll it out now.
So it's less geographic based. And especially now that it's mostly cell phones and things anyways, it doesn't really matter. But
because it was very difficult back then to take your number with you.
Right. Yeah, when you moved, you got a new number.
It wasn't like, "Oh, I'm moving. Oh, I'm just going to keep this number," or anything like that. It was because the numbers were tied to the
geographic location.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, the area code for sure. But the exchange was also tied to a town or part of a town. Yeah, in addition to the area code.
Yeah,
so you couldn't just take it with you if you moved to another town. Yeah, I remember that was a big deal because at the time the phone dialing, it was considered long distance. So you could be calling, down the street the next town over, and they were always in my area code. And now they're not, and I got to call long distance to call the next town over that was in my area code a week ago.
And your phone bill just like doubled.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and you didn't want to be on the side that got the new number. You wanted the old school one. You wanted to keep the original.
Yeah, luckily I haven't had to deal with that.
Yeah. Did you ever call the operator?
A couple times, yes.
I remember calling the operator, and I don't know why. I just thought it was funny to call the operator and just ask something stupid like, "Could I get the time, please?" And they would give you like the quote unquote official time. Because again, there was no internet to look it up on. So you'd call the operator for the time. I got to set my microwave. I had a power outage.
So I never called the operator for that. They had the time and temp number.
Oh, that's a separate thing?
Yeah.
I never knew about that.
Yeah, you would call that and it would give you the time and the temperature.
I was just bugging the operator for no reason. I remember when 411 came out, directory assistance, which we all just called information, right? You'd call information. It was basically you'd call 411 and ask them to try to figure out what Uncle Harry's number is.
So what was your first foray into the cell phone? We wouldn't really call it cell phones. Let's go back to non-landline.
Let's go all the way back. Let's go back to landlines. Let's start with that.
Okay.
I mean, I'm young enough and you're young enough. We're not that old to remember watching Nick at Night or something, you know, Mr. Ed or Lassie. And they what do they have in their houses? They had the big hand-cranked phone, wooden phone on the wall, the separate earpiece and mouthpiece, those things. We never used them, but we remember them. We knew what they were.
One of my friends actually had one of those, and it worked in their house when I was in elementary school. It was more of
the cartoons we watched had them too.
Yeah, it was more of a decorative piece. It was a beautiful phone. They never really used it, but it worked.
At one point, they made a novelty version of it that looked like the old style, but actually worked like a new phone. I wonder if it was.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it was, but.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, my early memories of phones in general were definitely rotary phones. I had rotary phones for a little bit. I remember the rotary phone and, you know, the old AT&T trim line standard handheld set.
Yep.
The one that was like a rectangle, had the base on the bottom, the receiver on the top. You pull it up. It's got underneath the cradle is the number pad. You dial it. Those are the two. And rotary dialing just in general.
I remember having one in my house. I think it was a leftover when we moved into the new house. I think there was one that was left there. But it was take you forever to dial.
Yep.
It made a cool sound though. Yeah. And you had to be careful. You didn't cut your finger on the metal piece at the end for you to stop because you don't want to go too far.
Nope. Then you get to start all over again.
Yep.
Well, the rotary phones, I think, really died out in the late 80s, early 90s. There's some lingering ones into the mid 90s, but by that time, everything was going more on the digital side. You could get the clear phones where you could just see all the wires inside, and they had
the Conair phone.
Yeah.
Yep.
Had the neon wires inside, of course. 90s, right?
Yeah, you had the Lips. Remember the Lips phone?
Yeah, Full House.
Yeah,
DJ Tanner and her Lips phone.
There was crazy molded ones that they started coming out with after that. It was the burger phone, and you had like Mickey Mouse holding a phone, and you had Garfield had a phone.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. My grandmother had the Garfield.
Yep. Yeah, it became a thing.
Yeah, you rip Garfield in half to get the phone out the back.
You name it, they made a phone out of it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah. Main thing we had in our house was you had that phone up on the wall and you had like a 20-foot phone cord.
Yep.
Because you had to walk
up.
Oh yeah. It was all knotted and because you had to walk around the house and talk on the phone. And it was always a central location. So that way there you could hit multiple rooms.
The kitchen. It was always in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Almost every house had one in the kitchen. You might have had another one somewhere else, but you had one in the kitchen.
Yeah, the kitchen, probably the living room were the main areas.
Every once in a while you'd go to someone's house where they had one in the bathroom.
Yes.
Just like, ooh.
Yeah, when I was in college, my bathroom had one.
Fancy living right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was like a big deal.
Yeah. And then if you had
first house I bought had them wired up in the bathroom.
Yeah.
So I just stared at blank phone jacks for years. I certainly wasn't wiring a phone up. But yeah.
Yeah. And then if you had, a teenage girl, they probably had a second line.
Well, you get tired of the busy signals.
Yeah.
So you'd get them their own line, right?
Yeah. And then they came out with became more popular in the early to mid 90s was you finally got the cordless phones. Right. It had the big retractable antenna you had to pull out.
Yeah. The batteries lasted like 6 minutes.
Yep.
At the beginning, eventually they got better. But yeah, those early ones, you were on a long phone call and beep, 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 beep. Oh, I got to go. The battery's dying. I got to go. Yeah. That was the thing.
Yep. And then at that point, you saw less phone jacks being installed in the houses because you could just keep one. And some of the bases you could have multiple handsets per base.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So you could just have one in your house, but you have phones everywhere.
Yeah. It's just wizardry right there.
Yeah.
It's unreal. Yeah.
And for you kids out there, if someone was on the phone, you could pick up any other phone in the house and listen to the whole conversation.
Right. You had to be sneaky though.
Yeah.
You had to ease the phone off the base, right? Pick it up slowly, slide your finger underneath the earpiece to try to press down on the what the hell is that called? The hook, the button.
Yep.
And I don't know where I'm going with this. What was I thinking?
Yeah, you'd have to be super sneaky because if you answered too quickly, they would hear the snap of the receiver, and then if you were too loud, they could hear you talking. So
you breathe into it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden they pause and it's like, wait, hold on. Shh.
Yeah. So
someone's listening.
So as the phone technology improved, you would get the mute button and stuff like that, but you had to have answered before you could hit mute. So, there's a lot of little tricks like that you would learn so you could eavesdrop on, your sister or whatever.
The best way was if someone called and you had more than one phone in the house, right? So you were on one phone and you'd holler, hey, this person's on the phone for you. And they would go pick it up on another phone. And you would pretend to hang up the phone.
Okay, you can hang up now. I did.
Okay. Yeah. Meanwhile, you're sitting there with your hand clasped over the mouthpiece.
Yep.
Just listening in to all the juicy gossip.
Yep.
I tried explaining to my kids what an answering machine was the other day. And it I got to the point where I was talking about dual cassette tapes recording things and rewinding, and it just, I could tell there was a disconnect there. It's just too far removed.
Yep.
From where they are. There's no way they're going to understand that concept. I'm like, picture it. You call and someone's not home and the machine picks it up for them. So it plays a tape that you've pre-recorded a message on. You'd play some ridiculous message. That was the fun things. You used to try to have funny messages, right? Some people would re-record them every week or every month or every season for holidays and things. It was great. And then you would record your message on another tape. And then when they got home, it would blink and they would know, oh, someone called me while I was away. They would hit play and it would rewind the tape and play back the messages. Yeah. But it was kind of great.
Yeah, and then they went to the digital version, and then voicemail.
And then finally voicemail, yeah.
Did you ever have the caller ID boxes?
No. And I had forgotten about the actual box, though. That was like a separate subscription.
Yeah.
You'd have to pay for the ability to see the number coming in and keep a history.
Yeah, so it would plug into, from your wall would go into the box. From the box, it would go into your phone.
People liked it because you could screen your calls. That was a new thing.
Yep.
You didn't have to answer every call and get stuck on the phone with a telemarketer because you thought it was, a family member calling you. Not as many timeshares being sold. Cold calls. It was cool to have, though. That was around the same time as those crazy star codes came out. Did you ever use any of those?
Yes. Yeah. I used to mask my number for jobs and stuff when I'd call.
Mm-hmm. I remember you had *66, which was to redial. So if you called somebody and they were busy, I know that's weird to think about. That does occasionally still happen now, but. And then it was *67. That's probably the most common one. That was the one that hid your number when you were calling out. And then *69, which was for calling back the number that called you. So if somebody tried prank calling you, you could hit *69 and try to call them right back and figure out who they are.
Yep.
Or if you missed a call, that's really more what it was for. If you missed a call, it was ringing and you ran across the house and couldn't get there in time.
Now would *69 work if you *67 them?
No, I don't think it does. I think it would give you a message just saying that number's unavailable. Pretty sure. So when all of the phones started coming out, cell phones, pagers, and then home internet, right? Everyone started using dial-up internet. We all got our 56K modems, started dialing in to CompuServe and AOL. We were using up the house phone. And your parent picks up the phone and they're trying to use it and they hear and they slam the phone down and yell down the hall, "Get off the internet so I can use the phone." Right.
Yeah.
Couldn't do both at the same time. So you'd have to disconnect, let them make their phone call, or vice versa. You're sitting there on the internet, you're surfing the web, exploring this hot new thing that everyone's trying to figure out. You're on some IRC chat maybe, or you're in a AOL chat room, and someone's trying to call your house and they're getting a busy signal over and over again.
Yeah. So that's where, I know in our house, we had 2 phone lines. So that second one that was originally my sister's kind of got commandeered for the internet.
Right. And that's, I think, what a lot of people ended up doing.
Yeah. And if, she got mad enough or whatever, you just pick up the phone and start hitting buttons, and then boom, you lose internet connection.
Yeah.
Because it messes up with the modems.
Click noise, and you'd go, oh. And you knew. I was trying to download a picture. It was taking 6 minutes.
Yeah. A 5 meg picture 20 minutes later.
I was listening to fun audio waves.
Oh man, the wave files. Did you have floppies just full of different wave files?
I absolutely did.
Oh yeah, I still actually I have some right behind me on my desk right now.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I know. I mean, I have a laser background. I think everyone would believe me when I say I have a floppy disk with old wave
floppy
files.
disks. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely did that. I would make little web pages and things and play around with stuff like that. Kind of just taught myself HTML and things of that nature. But yeah, it wasn't really much for games. You couldn't do much in that area. And
I was big into StarCraft. That was big in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Was that online though?
Yes. It was multiplayer.
Okay, so I remember having a lot of games on the computer, but not having a lot of internet-based games.
Yeah, so you install it on your computer, but then you played with other people over the internet. So it was the space version of Warcraft.
Right.
So
I have a hard time believing that was very reliable.
It was actually pretty good. It was pretty good.
I feel like every time you go to play, you'd lose your connection.
I mean, that happened. You'd get a lot of buffering and stuff like that. But StarCraft, man, me and my cousin and some of our friends every day after school, we would go play for hours.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
I don't know that game. Don't have any experience playing that.
No, we should play.
Okay. Hey, I'm game.
Hi, Noah here, one of the rad kids, here with this week's trivia question. Hand-crank telephones worked by electrical generators that used magnets to create electric current. Turning the crank rotated the magneto, causing a bell to ring that would alert the operator that an individual wanted to make a call. So your question is, where was the last hand-cranked phone call made in the United States?
Now, did you have a beeper? Did you ever have a beeper? A pager?
A pager. Back in the day, they were pretty popular. I didn't have one. I knew had a couple friends that had them. I knew all about them and stuff though, because my dad had one because he was on call all the time. Right. So yeah, we had our codes that we would send. So
because you could only send numbers.
Yeah,
you couldn't send letters. So you'd have to spell things out in like a code that they could translate, or you might have your own special code with somebody already set up so that okay, this means this, right? But there was always those, you take the letters on each number and punch those in, and they'd have to kind of translate. It's like you're sending them a puzzle.
Yeah. Now, obviously, 911 was an emergency, and you had all those codes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Did you ever have one?
No, I never had one. They were easy to prank, though, I will say. Those were fun to send prank messages to, because you'd send somebody something. What the hell does this mean? You write it down, and I don't know. What are they trying to tell me? Sometimes you just send them a phone number, right? And they'd know, oh, I got to call this phone number back. But yeah, there was always those other secret coded messages. Send somebody down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
On a wild goose chase.
Yeah, and nowadays, no one really has pagers. They're still big in the healthcare industry because you can still receive your messages and stuff even in low cellular areas. Mm-hmm. So like if you're in a big hospital, it's cell phones don't work if you get into the bowels of the building, but pagers will still work.
Right.
Now, did you ever have the car phones or the bag phones?
Nope. I had one relative who had a car phone. So I remember riding in their vehicle and just feeling so futuristic having that thing. It was mounted between the two front seats on the hump.
Yep.
You remember the hump?
Oh, yeah.
Almost all the cars were still bench seats in the front. So, yeah, the little hump out front, you mount the phone right in there. And then the back of the vehicle sticking up from the roof, little pigtail antenna.
Yep. Yeah, we had a bag phone in our car. So a bag phone, the difference is it's portable. So if you're switching vehicles or whatever, you can do it. It's a pain in the butt because you have that antenna that has a magnet that you can put in the roof, and you got to wire it through your car so the kids don't trip on it or any of that stuff. But it was always funny when you go into because we had a big van. Was it a Ford Aerostar?
Oh, the Aerostar.
Yeah, so it was a big box.
And then they came out with the Windstar.
Yeah,
it was a little sleeker. Yeah,
and so it was already a bigger vehicle, and when we go into a parking garage, we had that antenna on, so you just hear ting 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 ting. And if you looked up at the parking garages, you could see the lines of all the antennas hitting the roof. Yeah, every time I pull into a parking garage now, it's like I think of that because I'd always want to duck. It's like, what's going on? It's like, oh, it's just a stupid little antenna.
Noah here, back with the answer for your trivia question. The last hand-cranked telephone system in the U.S. was used in the town of Bryant Pond, Maine. The small family-owned telephone company, which operated the town's phone system, finally switched over in 1983. To commemorate this distinction, the town unveiled a 14-foot-tall, jet black candlestick-style phone with a big crank. the largest telephone in the world in October of 2008.
And then you started getting into the early days of actual cell phones. Yeah, so 2G came out in the early 90s, and that was a huge boost because the first generation was analog, and then the 2G came out and was digital, which allowed for easier access, more bandwidth. But the original phones, man, you couldn't beat them. Some of the early phones, the Nokias.
I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Couldn't believe I actually had it. And you try to make phone calls and things. There was no text. The calls, man, every time you'd make a phone call, it would drop out, right? You'd be in the middle of a phone call and it would just go dead, or you'd disconnect. There was always dead spots. I mean, you find that now, especially if you drive rural areas, you might find a dead spot here and there. But before, you could be in the middle of a big city with thousands of people around, and
walk by the skyscraper and boom, there goes your signal.
Yeah, there goes. It's gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very basic. There was no text messaging yet. Didn't have that. No. And once that was there, you had to pay, right? You were charged.
Well, you were at that time you were paying to talk too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you might have a small number of minutes per month, or it was just a set amount per minute. Yeah, I'm not sure, but I remember it was a whole lot more expensive. There was none of this unlimited talk and unlimited text. And
yeah, no, you had to buy. So from what I recall, your plan would come with 20 free minutes. And then after that, it was 50 cents or 75 cents, $1 a minute afterwards. Yeah. So which is why when I got my parents gave me my first phone, it was emergency purposes only. Right. If they needed to reach us or something happened. Yeah.
It added up.
Yeah. And that mindset for me was all the way up until I was almost graduating college. So I got my first phone, I think it was right around 2000, probably 99, 2000, because that's when I, started driving. And it probably wasn't until 2006 when I was like, oh, hey, I can actually use this more than, just emergencies.
More than
the plans were all changing. They were going to unlimited talk, but not text. You had to pay for text at that time.
Yeah, that's when texting first started becoming more popular, but it was still paper text. So you'd have some people that would just turn it off outright and not allow it to come in.
Yep.
And then others who
they
would get mad at you and they'd text back, this is costing me 10 cents.
Yeah, because
stop texting me.
You had one fee to send and you had another fee to receive.
Right. Yes.
So you had no idea someone was going to be texting you and it's oh, now I have to pay for this.
Because you had no idea, you had no say in the matter.
Yep.
Yeah, it was charging you whether you wanted it or not. I mean, somebody could just keep sending over and over and over again. I mean, the thing that kept people from doing it is it would cost them money at the same time. Yep. But yeah, the potential was definitely there to abuse and mess somebody up pretty good.
And the text messaging too wasn't full keyboards.
No,
you had to use a number pad because those smartphones weren't out at that time. The iPhone came out in 2008, 2007, 2008 was when the iPhone was released, and that changed the game. There were a couple phones the Sidekick and was it the Envy? They would flip up and have a full keyboard underneath.
That was a novel thing at the time.
Yeah. But for the most part, you were just doing the number pad, 333, 6, whatever. And everybody always had that friend that could keep the phone in their pocket and text War and Peace without ever looking at the phone. And unbelievable. I could never do it. I fat fingered everything. Still do.
Well, this was back in the prime butt dial period too. That's why, because you had your phone in your pocket. The keypad were literal buttons.
Yep.
Physical buttons were sticking out from the face of the device. So if you leaned on it or sat on it, it would press the button and you would, quote unquote, butt dial people. We've kind of gotten away from that a little bit. I mean, you have that every once in a while now, but it's a lot harder to do.
Yeah. And that was really before the flip phones too.
Correct.
Because once the flip phones came out, that pretty much ended it. If you had one of those, you wouldn't, butt dial anyone.
Right. But, progress. We've gotten there. Thankfully, they were evolved enough that they weren't quite, the Zach Morris, Gordon Gekko giant brick phone. Thankfully, we didn't have those, but I remember my first phone being pretty crappy.
That Zach Morris phone, awesome. I had that phone as a walkie-talkie.
Oh, yeah.
It was amazing.
It was better as that than as a phone.
Yeah.
Those things cost $3,500.
No.
Yes, in the early 90s. And they had 20 minutes of battery life.
Wow.
Yeah. A whopping 20 minutes of talk time.
So how did Zach talk on it all the time?
I mean, the magic of Hollywood. That's right. They can do magical things. Maybe he's charging it at Mr. Belding's office between classes. I don't know. But yeah. Pretty crazy, right?
That is.
What are some of the old ones you had? Do you remember?
So I had the
being out in the wild.
I had the Nokia 3310. My first one was the model before that. It was bigger and it had the little antenna that stuck up.
Yeah, the little antenna. Yeah, that's the one that I had.
Yeah. Yes. So I had that one. That was the one that you would drop and it would cause an earthquake.
Yes, they were tanks.
Yeah, you had to demo a building. You just started throwing that phone at the building and the building would collapse. So from there, I forget, it was a silver flip phone. I forget what model it was. And then I had the Razor for a while. By far the greatest phone ever.
I loved that phone. I had one myself, and it was definitely one of my. It was such a huge upgrade at the time. Yeah, those were great.
And then I had a BlackBerry. I forget which version of the BlackBerry. It was just for a cup of tea. I had that one, and then I went to the BlackBerry. Was it the Click with a whole? It was a mechanical screen. It was their first touch screen, but they wanted to keep the tactile response of physical buttons, so the whole screen moved and clicked. It was a cool idea, but it didn't work that well.
Yeah.
And then I went to a couple Androids, and then I was a big Windows Phone guy for a while. The HTC 8, and I had a Nokia. I had that all the way up until they shut down the service. We couldn't even use the phones anymore.
Yes, the Nokia 5110. I think that was it. Looking at some old photos. I'm pretty sure that was my first phone. It is an oldie, but a goodie.
Yes, the 5110. Yep.
It's actually prior to the 3300s and 3200s. Higher number, but it was older. So if you look at it, that's the one with the little antenna sticking up in the top right corner with the face plates we used to pop off. But yeah, I remember the Motorola Razr was fantastic. I had one in between that was black, and I remember it had like a checkerboard pattern around the screen. I don't remember what that was called. And other than that, I remember having I think it was a Pearl. Was it BlackBerry Pearl?
Yes, that was one of their real popular ones.
Yeah. I think that's the last phone I had before I got my first iPhone, which was pretty early on.
I think that was the last BlackBerry anyone ever owned.
Yeah, for most people, yeah, because then the iPhones came out. So the 2G I never had. Like those, not many people had those. But when the 3G iPhone came out, I hopped on immediately. That's when they first became mainstream.
Yeah, I was never iPhones. I was never a big fan of Apple, so I stayed away. After the Windows phones shut down, I've been pretty much just the Samsung Galaxies.
That's okay. Yep. It's kind of one of those things. Once you start on one, it's really hard to go back and forth. You get so
you're stuck in the ecosystem.
Entrenched. Yeah, between the apps and just the familiarity. I mean, you hand me your phone right now and I hand you my phone and we would both struggle.
Oh yeah.
Just with the navigation, the menus, the settings. Yeah, it's just so easy and familiar that it's just the barrier to change is just too great.
It's not even the interface, right? You can get used to that, give yourself a couple weeks and you can get used to it. It's the fact that, for me, being Windows, Microsoft guy, everything is in the Microsoft ecosystem. They partnered with Android. And so they have their overlays and stuff. So it's easy for me to, get my stuff into that environment and use it. And then because I have a ton of Samsung devices in my house, getting a Samsung phone, they work pretty smoothly with all my devices. So it just made it so much easier because I'm already in their ecosystem, which like you, I'm sure that you use all kinds of stuff, all the Apple services.
Yeah, I really didn't. I have more and more and more as time has gone on. Yeah, because for that same reason, right? Because they just work well together.
Yep.
I recently needed to buy a new computer, and for the first time in my life, that's what I bought because it's just so much easier to hook in with everything I already have. Yeah. Hey, I mean, they're smart. It works.
Yep.
But yeah.
So do we have any fast, fun facts this week?
Well, I got a couple, got to keep that going.
Oh, nice.
So we talked about payphones earlier and how they pretty much disappeared quickly, right? They dropped from 2.6 million to less than 100,000 between 1995 and 2020. So 25 years, we went from 2.6 million to under 100K. So that just kind of illustrates that point.
I'm surprised there's still that many.
Yeah, I guess they got to be tucked around somewhere. You feel like that number's probably continuing to dwindle every year. And honestly, half the payphones that I still see around now
don't have handsets.
No, yeah, the handset's broken off. They're all bashed in. So I don't know if those are still in the count because the shell is there, but yeah. So when we talked about the dialing, right? We talked about switching to 7-digit and 10-digit dialing. It was Maryland that led the way when they became the first state to switch from 7-digit to 10-digit dialing in 1997. Okay. So there are 11 states with only one area code. So as you said, Maine, right? The state we live in.
Yep.
There's Alaska, Delaware, Hawaii, Montana, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Rhode Island, South Dakota, Vermont, and Wyoming. But a lot of those states have another area code in the works, or it's already scheduled to be released in the next couple of years. So that number is going to be reduced pretty quickly. So yeah, still 11. I would have guessed less than 11. So that's interesting.
Well, when you look at the list, they all make sense.
Yeah, for sure.
The one that surprises me,
populated.
Yeah, the one that surprises me a little bit is Rhode Island. I know it's a small state, but
it's densely populated.
Yeah. You look at the others, Alaska, they'll have one for ever.
Yeah.
Probably Hawaii too, because they're fairly small.
Wyoming has the lowest.
Yeah, so Wyoming.
They'll stay. Yeah, Vermont. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I could see Vermont, New Hampshire. New Hampshire surprises me too.
Yeah, that's probably got to be one that's coming. I know Montana was one of the ones with a new area code scheduled to be coming pretty soon too, because it's such a huge state, and they do have a few good-sized cities. So, but
as long as Maine stays on that one area code.
Mm-hmm.
Although the way everyone's been moving in,
it's not looking like that.
No,
not looking like that.
Maybe they'll give us a 702.
Oh, 702. The last fast fact I have is that the first telephone greeting, which was used by Alexander Graham Bell throughout his whole life, was ahoy hoy. Ahoy hoy, a nautical expression. So hello was actually made popular by Thomas Edison, who made his employees use that when they answered the phone. So hello, as a follow-up to that, was a pretty new word at the time, and it didn't mean hi. So it was an exclamation used to attract attention, and it was really used like the word hey is today. It's kind of interesting. So I didn't know that. It didn't actually become the word it is now, like synonymous with hi, until after it was used and became popular as a greeting on the telephone.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So the word completely changed the meaning, and we have Thomas Edison to thank for its use on the telephone. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
There you go.
I like that last fast fun fact.
That's right. It's more of a it's more of a fun fact because it was not fast at all. I had heard the ahoy thing before. Like,
yeah,
I've heard that trivia question about ahoy, but apparently it was actually ahoy hoy, which is even weirder. And the hello thing with Edison, that I did not know. So
yeah, no, I had no idea. That's a good one.
Well, on that note, I think that just about does it for this episode. You can reach us on Instagram at tworaddads and on Facebook at tworaddads. You can email us your questions, comments, episode topic ideas. We welcome it all. The address is tworaddads@outlook.com.
Right. Remember, in all of those, you spell out the word two, TWO. Do not use the number 2.
And new this week, you can now send us a text by clicking the link in the episode descriptions.
That's right. So in the show notes, there should be a link that says send the show a text. Click that. Text us.
And don't forget to rate us 5 stars on whatever platform you're listening to us on, and write reviews. That's greatly appreciated as well.
Yeah, let us know so we see it, right? Sometimes they're out there and we don't see them.
So until next time,
stay rad. Trying to sell me an auto warranty or tell me about my Medicaid, which I don't have, those things.
Well, you're getting up there, bud.
We all are. Don't rush it. What the hell kind of transition is that?
I don't know. That was bad. We've had some bad ones, but that one towards the top. Yeah, we need to have a little Sean's Fun Fast Facts.
Yes, we need something. Okay.